Alrighty, thank you all for coming out today. My name is John Berlin. I'm the senior backend developer with Webrecorder. And previously, before joining Webrecorder, I was with the Web Science and Digital Libraries Research Group based out of Old Dominion University in Virginia. So Webrecorder is affiliated with the RIMA Zone with the New Museum of Contemporary Art based out of New York City. Its genesis came about for the need to preserve digital-only art, because at the time when colleague Ilya Kramer, if you saw his talk on containers and preserving WordPress yesterday, he's the mad genius behind all of Webrecorder and all the cool things I'm about to talk to you today for. And it's because of art and its necessity for high fidelity replayability, if you will. You can use these tools, which I'm about to talk to you today about, to preserve various other various other web things. It encompasses the entire spectrum, if you will. So during the session today, I'm going to share with you how to use Webrecorder, which is an open source project and available on webrecorder.io as a free service for you to use. We'll share with you about information about how you can download your preserved web pages and content via work files, and it just pretty much stands for Web Archive. And it's an ISO standard, so this format is likely not going to go away due to its ratification and standardization, as well as share with you how you can view your archive content offline using the Webrecorder player, and then as well as how can you describe, collect, and manage your web archive using webrecorder.io. So if you don't mind me asking a few questions, how many of you here today are familiar with web archiving? Ish. All right, so good number familiar with it. So pardon me if I saying stuff you already know, but so web archiving in general is sort of a multi-step process. So most of the time we think via Gmail, you see it says something like archive your email. All that's really saying is don't delete it. But archiving is really much more, web archiving is much more than just don't delete it. It's the ability to take the web, the ephemeral web, and to serialize or to preserve it forever via the standardized format. Because what we will be preserving is the primitives of the web, the understanding, so that if Drupal, WordPress, or the sun dies, and we have some record in somewhere of what was web, you can still use what was preserved forever and into the future. Also, web archiving is about description. So you have URLs, but then what's the context about that URL? What is the content that you preserve? Why is it important? How can we tell others about it or give them an idea of why I preserved it? Just some generalized context for it. As well as access and permissions. You can sort of think of them as one and the same. Is that I'm saying here's what I've preserved. I'm saying you can view it or not, and it's the control via Webrecorder. You can say, I'm not going to share this with the public, or I am going to share it with the public, and vice versa, and also to facilitate long-term preservation. And I do apologize if I repeat myself throughout the talk, but the topics overlap a lot. So if you want to know a little bit more detailed information versus the very broad overview I just gave, you can see the slides by Anna Perici, who is the project manager and the person you'd likely be talking to more so with when you email, if you do, Webrecorder. And she did this for the Society of American Archivists and the Digital Archive Specialist course, and this is a much more detailed overview of what web archiving is, and it will give you much more information which I can give you today. So what is Webrecorder? So Webrecorder allows you to create, as I previously stated, high fidelity interactive captures of the web. Yes, we use record, and it's sort of a misnomer, if you will. we technically record the HTTP traffic, i.e. the web primitives, when you're browsing via Webrecorder.io and you're doing initiating the preservation. But we don't, excuse me, water is trying to assassinate me today. It's not a video recording, if you will. It's the interaction with the server or like google.com. You're talking to Google and you get back. That is what we get. And as the easiest way to wrap that around is to say you're recording the web, if you will. And then there's also the Webrecorder player app, which is, we consider it like the missing link for you to view your archived content. Because normally it requires a lot of technical knowledge to set up the systems that are to facilitate the generalized replay of your preserved content, whereas the Webrecorder player app bundles that all together just so that you can view the work files that are preserved, generated from the content, if you want to download your collections from Webrecorder.io on your personal machine. It's very nice if you want to do like YouTube videos and you don't, on an airplane and you have no internet on the airplane, or you don't want to pay for it, you can view the YouTube video that you preserve using the Webrecorder player app. So a little bit more information about the Webrecorder project in of itself. Again, it's a project by Amazon. We are generous support from the Andrew Mellon Foundation as well as the Knight Foundation. It's a free to use tool set. It's fully open source. Everything that you see is available via GitHub, and we use permissive licenses, Apache, MIT for our various projects, so you yourself can you retrieve the repository, set it up on your own system if you don't want to use the hosted service, or you can just use Webrecorder.io, however you wish to go about it. So here's our team. We're a small group of people. Dragan Eschenscheid is the director of preservation at Amazon. Is me, you probably have already met Ilya Kramer. He created Webrecorder and all the cool stuff that facilitates this project. Then we have the dynamic duo, Mark Beasley and Pat Shu. They ensure that everything looks nice and it's not like a developer-oriented approach to design, so that everyone can have a nice experience using the tools. And then, as previously mentioned, Anna Perici, she is Associate Director of Strategic Projects and the forward-facing person when you send emails to it. And then, of course, myself here. So I alluded to high-fidelity web archiving previously. Really, if in audio terms, that's a faithful reproduction of the original sound. If you're a vinyl fan like myself, you look for that. And now that's what we're trying to do with web archiving, is that we want to have the web content you preserve be persisted exactly as it existed at the time of preservation. And we do that via using web browsers, which is different than traditional web archiving, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. And that allows you to do both static, interactive, or anything that's loaded from sort of like a CMS without actually having a CMS, because when you visit, during your session, if you type in a query, all that information that's being the traffic and the ultimate what's responses being sent back to you is being preserved so that you can have that content in later on. And essentially, again, it's the same mechanism for preservation and viewing of the content, which is your web browser. So traditional web archiving uses web crawlers, if you will. And what that does is, this will give you a high-level overview of it, is it just looks into the content and doesn't do any of the things that your web browser would normally do. It doesn't execute JavaScript, so any of the various cool projects that have been listed and shown to you at Domains Conference that do a lot of dynamic computation, if you will, to give you the content on the fly, it is likely not going to be preserved if you use your traditional crawler-based systems, just due to the limitations of them not being a browser or executing or the JavaScript and rendering the page. And that's just the limitations for it. So when you're using Webrecorder, we like to think of it as collection or human scale web archiving. Because anyone here familiar with the Internet Archive and others? Yeah, so that's institutional web archiving. It's done by this entity that you may or may not know some people that are running it, but you have no idea what they're preserving, why they're preserving it, or if they're not preserving something due to whatever reasons that they have. And that's, who knows, that could be any institution. However, with using Webrecorder, you yourself are in ultimate control of the content. It is your intention that preserves the web content that you want, not us. We only facilitate you the means by doing so. You have to go and preserve it rather than an institution who just does wide. And that's both good if you're at an institution, like some of the things for students, if they don't want their content to be persisted and you're running the backend for the school and they say, hey, this percentage of the class wants it to be persisted and this other doesn't, then you could use Webrecorder to only get those who wanted it versus not. Versus if you're using more of the traditional, it would get everything at once, indiscriminatory, and you would have to take time out of your life to then go and filter through and make sure you got all the stuff that someone did not give you their explicit permission to be preserved and made available at a later time. So with Webrecorder, we offer two means to do it. You can do a login, you create an account, which gives you 5 gigs of space to do preservation, or you do it anonymously. Just going up, load the service, type a URL in the bar, say use my current browser to preserve, do all the things you want to do, click all the things you want and whatnot. And when you're done, you get the standard collection set. The only real difference is it's not going to be persisted. There's a set time limit for this anonymous collection to be alive, but while it is alive, you can download all the content that you just preserved via a work file. Is there any questions by now if I lost anybody? Alrighty. If you do, throw something at my head or however you wish to grab my attention. But if you were to create an account, or if you just test it out and say, oh wow, this can get my content via the anonymous, you can sign in or create an account, and then the content that you just preserved and used an anonymous or non-logged in account session will be persisted and made available for you. So again, repeating myself, it's for interactive content primarily. That was the genesis, but it also works very well for static sites or anything, because if you're all familiar that there's a lot of things they're using lazy loading or various techniques to speed up pages to be served to your browser. And if you're familiar with Google and the metrics that they're pushing, that's what they're aiming for, is to defer the resources, which are large because video image content by necessity is quite large versus your HTML that's being sent over. So that using Webrecorder with the browser, we can get that content at all stages throughout of your viewing of the page. And again, browse means you can access the captured content in the web archive and browse it interactively, just like the live web, i.e. we persisted it as it existed. So we're talking a lot about collections and your web archives, but really it's just nothing more than a bound archive, i.e. you have your logical units or collections of your archive, and it's at a specific time. It's not this huge dump if you've used any other web archiving service or various other tool sets to preserve. They just give you this one huge file or sets of files, and it's what's in there. You have to go search and know the file format and hope and cross your fingers that the service or the tool set just doesn't die, or when you upgrade your systems, you can still use it to view it. But by using the collection-based web archiving, you have the understanding of what it is, because we give it into the bound archive or the logical unit, which carries on your description, all the metadata about it for you. And again, yes, and this is a curatorial browser control for the web archive. And again, I mentioned this before, you can create your collections, or as I will demonstrate a little bit further, lists within a public collection. So collections on a whole can be public and private, as well as you can create specific lists which highlight subparts of the entire set of your collection. And again, sorry, this is more like the mullet talk, business up front, party in the back. I will be sharing. There will be a lot more interactive. You will definitely see what I mean for it. And by anyone, shared, and again. All right. So also, yeah, I mentioned it previously that without using a browser in the way that Webrecorder does, it is incredibly hard to preserve web content. If you're familiar with everyone's probably used Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all the things. All these sites are pushing the boundaries, what they're using, what frameworks, underlying tool sets, or just what they are using. And especially a quick tidbit of trivia knowledge, if you use Firefox versus Chrome and you go view YouTube, you're going to get two different applications that look very similar but act incredibly different. And that's what we mean by is pushing the limits. Because if you get something in Firefox and you're crawling it, it could be different. Versus if you have something in Chrome, it could all be similar, or it also could be different. But that's a little bit more so in a technical sense. And yes, your traditional web crawlers do not run JavaScript, they don't render, and they do very rudimentary heuristics to discover the content versus letting your web browser, which is considered a de facto user agent, i.e. again, when you use your web browser, you are putting your intent to view that content versus the crawler who has no idea and has to try to discover in whatever best way it can, which often fails, especially for more dynamic content. It also works well for your audio video, which is streamed more typically. And then if you don't have your crawler or the preservation means is not set up for that, then it has no idea how to deal with that stream. What does it even mean to consume it and then serialize it? But because with the browser, it knows how to do all these things, just wrap up in one beautiful package, you're all ready to rock and roll. So apps. So when you think of apps, you think of like your Twitter apps or whatever various other applications. And what's also very interesting is that most of your applications on your phone nowadays are nothing more than a web browser running a very specialized version of the web page. Now, in general, Webrecorder is not that suited for that kind of content. However, applications sort of like CNN, CMS-based driven applications, databases, YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, things that are not like specialized for mobile applications. Those types of applications we are very good at preserving. However, the mobile-only ones, not so much, just due to the differences in the web platform, non-mobile versus mobile. And again, social media, yes. So if anyone's a historian, digital humanities, or any other discipline that might take an active look at social media or various other things, we do very well with it. You can, if you wanted to, you could sign in to your Twitter account via Webrecorder. However, we suggest that you do a dummy account, just because when you do download something, the toolset Webrecorder is by design is not going to serialize passwords by design. But however, just on the off chance Twitter or Facebook or whatever other service changes up and something's drastically in the middle and something does get serialized to the Word file and you're sharing it, you don't want those details. So it's generally best to create a dummy account, or if you're not ever going to share it, then by all means you can sign in, but it works well for that as well. So we also have things pre-configured browsers, because I think everyone, well, I remember the Java days, the applets, Flash games. Those are so cool. And we offer the ability to use browsers that are configured with those plugins for your use, e.g. old Chrome or Firefox, so that you can view and relive old web pages that have Flash and Java, as well as preserve them in their entirety. All right, it's fun time now. So here's a few collections that we like to show off for people. These are ones, but I'm going to show you today one that I have been personally collecting myself. So when I previously mentioned that you can, can everyone see this, or you need me to zoom in? Roger on that. This good? Excellent, awesome. So yeah, you can do, this is what I mentioned, the list, this is your overview, and it's my description. I kind of wanted to do a remix on You Can't Touch This. Nah. So I went through, and just to have a little bit of fun, just remixed it in the context of where iFidelity web archiving. So I literally did the whole entire song, so my description is very long. I do apologize, but yes. So here, this is public. Sorry, I'm jumping all around the place. If you notice, public, this whole collection is public. Likewise with this list. And I added all the URLs or the web pages that I desired to be preserved to this list here, so you can go ahead and view them all here if you wanted to. This collection, I will say, tests the limits of web archiving's capabilities just due to the content composition which each of these web pages has. And we also give you if you want an overview, or you can view all the timestamp of which the URL was preserved, title, and the full URL for it. Now, where is this one really cool one? So now we're viewing one of the pages in this collection. So this is Open Continents. It's a narrative-based interactive experience that's going on using WebGL and some various other cool things, but I won't bother you with the details. And there's video here. As you get, if you're familiar with Vimeo, hopefully the conference internet will allow us to load it. But if you get on your own, all these videos have been preserved and they're easily replayed via this collection. Did I drop internet? No, I did not. Well, this is becoming... Alright. But yes. There's various other ones you can go through here. Let's see if I can find one more that's pretty cool. Visualization on how NASA is using the Google Cloud platform to discover planets around the solar system. And I'm scrolling through here just so we can get through it real quick and we get to the more cooler part. And they're looking for exoplanets. Alright, don't train the model, we know it works. Let's get to the cool stuff. Also, you can do games. So you're trying to. This one is a simpler one. You're trying to find it. There's the. Oh, I went to that exact one. So we can scroll down here. So where's the one that's easy to? I think it's on the left. As you can see, they want you to use a mouse rather than on your laptop for these. And this is the various web content. Either sometimes it works well with touchpads, sometimes it don't. It's just what it is, and I'm not going to bore you with that. So who wants to preserve stuff with me today? Alrighty. So if you want, you can go ahead and go to right here. And if anyone's starting and you want me to I'll give you a few minutes and just holler at me when you're all ready, and I can give you the full one-on-one walkthrough. And while we're waiting, does anyone have any questions?
The difference between a collection and a list, I missed that.
A collection is the overall containment of all your paid web content and pages that you preserve. The list is the powers you have for curatorial. You can associate a subset of all your pages to a specific list inside of a larger collection. Let's say you have something like social media or like somebody's birthday, and they're doing like a public figure's birthday, and there's a lot of sources, and you say, oh, here's the responses from Twitter, here's the responses from platform X, Y, and Z. You can subdivide your entire collection into these lists by that. Yes.
It's basically a curated view onto a collection.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you're trying this out, I can also walk around and help anyone who has any questions while John's talking here. So let me know. Yeah, you should be able to basically go to Webrecorder.io and enter a URL that you'd like to start archiving, and start from there.
Yes, and so this is our browser list, as I previously mentioned before. This is you have the pre-configured, and this uses a remote that we run it via Docker to do the preservation and via our remote browsers. And if we list the capabilities here, both Firefox 56 and Chrome 53 have Flash. Firefox 49 has Flash and Java, so though if you wanted to preserve pages that have Java or Flash content, this one would probably be your best bet. And if you were in Ilya's talk yesterday, where it's demoed Old Web Today, that we were able to view GeoCities using old Netscape and old IE. It's using the same system, if you will, for it. As well as you can add notes for your session if you're about to start one. And this is primarily for you yourself only. All right, we ready to start? All right, so you can make your collection initially public or private. I'm going to make mine public. Yes.
You have to log in first. So if you just went on Webrecorder.io, you'll be browsing anonymously, and so then you could also choose to sign up for an account, and then you could make new collections. If you're just browsing, so John is
yes, my apologies. Thank you.
As himself, but again, you don't have to make an account to just try Webrecorder. You could just go ahead and start archiving. But if you want it to be saved on Webrecorder.io, then you can, after you're done, or even at any point, you can click on the sign up at the top, and then you can create an account. Oh, if you open it in the community, you can show the sign up.
Yes.
Yes, this is what it is.
So it's pretty much very similar to the page where if you're logged in, but you can do the same thing. It won't be happy if you try to preserve Webrecorder in and of itself.
Not yet.
Not yet. We're trying to work on those awesome capabilities. Or maybe we can get to the part where we can be self-modifying at runtime to adapt. But I don't know if we have that type of cool abilities just right.
Do you want to show the recording mode and the size camera?
Oh yeah. All right. So pretty much, if you got to the point, or if you're not, or if you want to, you put your URL that you want to preserve, and if you signed in or not, you can create a collection, or you can just start doing into your default one, and we can hit start to begin the preservation. So yes, per the name, we have this little red dot up here. So when new content is coming in, that will start blinking like your camera application or your your regular camera to let you know that there is content that is being preserved, and if you cut it off, you may not have it before it just stops. So we're looking at the hashtag on Twitter for the conference. We have some photos here, and the size per your capture session is displayed here, so you know just how much space this recording is going to take up here. And we'll scroll down a little bit, and you see it's thinking, and there you go. We just went up by about 3 MBs of content. Scroll a little bit more. As you can see, as we're getting down, Twitter is lazy loading images. It's not going to display it all for you until you get to that region of the position they determined to show you the image. And that's a common pattern, usage pattern that many websites use, which makes it difficult to preserve them without using a browser.
So for infinite scroll, you just keep scrolling?
Yes, or until we get more of our automation tool set, which we are working on.
We actually do have a turn on auto scroll.
Which is available at this here?
Yeah, and then soon we'll roll out even more advanced automation features that will automatically click on the tweets. And actually, oh no, yeah. So improved automation features are coming pretty soon.
Yes. So I stopped it there, and this is the default view of a collection. And if you wanted to do a list, you just hit the edit button that's on the left hand side, create a new list. Done. And hopefully I can show it. But there is my cursor. You may not be so easily see it there, but there is a little indication that you can select this section and you can drag it, and it's as simple as adding your page that you just preserved to a public list here, and there it is. It's not removed from the collection as a whole. It's just associated with this list, and you can go back and forth through it. You can, back to when I first showed you my own personal collection, this is what we saw in the domains hashtag, the overview in the browse all. That's what we call the cover page. And if you wanted to replay, you just click on it. Because Chrome is my default browser, it detects there's a login and some various other things to say, hey, maybe you should log in here for it. And as you can see that we have the images and the content that we just viewed. Any questions? Anybody hit us, any snags, things blow up?
Mine seems to be taking a very, very, very long time to capture just a simple web page. Is that normal?
Well, it does, perhaps, but also you have to realize that because we're doing like what we call the recording, your network speed is also that the Wi-Fi connection or your whatever network you're on, its speeds do impact the speed of preservation and what you can get. Because if whatever service takes a god awful long time to get back to you, and you're also running slow for something large, it might time out or something.
It was just my mistake. I didn't know it stayed red after it was done. So.
Yeah, so if the red dot in the top left corner is not blinking, that means it's already done with that page. Essentially, you can keep browsing as much as you want. Yeah, maybe if you switch back to recording mode, you can show that.
Yes, we got.
Yeah, so like that. That's because it's entirely interactive. The way that it's kind of tricky to communicate when there's new stuff being captured and when it's just basically sitting there, and so the red dot is kind of what we have now to indicate that it's actually capturing new stuff versus just showing you what's already there.
Yes.
Yeah, so while it's blinking, it means that it's recording network traffic, and then when it's done, that means it's already recorded, and now it's just kind of there in the browser. And so as you scroll more, you can see that it begins to blink again.
Yeah, it was so fast, it blinked so fast I didn't even notice, so that's
Gotcha.
great.
But, yeah, perhaps we'll find other ways to communicate that.
And also, if you're viewing when you're doing, hold on, I'll demo that for you. So if you're inside of the page that you just captured, and you see something's missing, or you didn't get down to a part where something that was important was loaded, you weren't significantly scrolled down or did some action to do it, and you wanted to go to capture that, you can do something. You could either patch or record again. So if you wanted to patch it or doctor it up, just for whatever reason something wasn't preserved, you can start the session over. It's not going to, if I recall correctly, not going to put a new entry, but it's going to put what was missing. If anything's newly recorded, it's going to add that to the existing for you here. And that's another cool feature for you.
Question.
Yeah.
Really cool. But I'm not logged in, and I can see where I can download like a full collection, like my capture like 4 pages, but not one at a time. Is there a way to do that, or is it just all or nothing with the temporary?
So,
Just log in?
all right. So do you see the
Mhm.
right here?
Yeah.
You can go to manage sessions. Thank you for bringing that up. Here, and we have all of the sessions that you just created. So if you start a session, you do multiple your pages there, it will be associated with that session, and then you can download that session individually. And but each of the URLs, if you can do one session per URL or web page, or you can do it in aggregate via the entire collection, and then you have just what you preserved on your computer. And I think this is a nice segue to show you the Webrecorder.
Just have to also, if you want to split things up into smaller components, you can basically create a new session for each page or each new site that you want to then download separately. Otherwise, it's very tricky to separate things out, because it's one page might share resources from, or multiple pages might share resources from across, and so by creating a new session is kind of how you can delineate different units.
So if you did download a full, like, one page or like a full session to run it again, like if I wanted a local copy then to like see it later, would I just put it, like, run it back in the browser?
You could either use the Webrecorder player, which I have
Oh,
up
okay.
here, or you can also upload any work files that you have, work or ARC files that you have on your computer. That's another format, but traditionally nowadays it's work to Webrecorder. If you got it from any other source like Archive It or any other place, you can upload that to Webrecorder if you want to make it publicly available, as well as use the Webrecorder player, which is sort of the desktop version-ish. So
Yeah, and everyone can also download this if you'd like. We have it right now. It's just available on GitHub. I don't know if we have a link handy, but yeah, it's basically okay. There we go. Yeah. So if you'd like to, essentially, well, Webrecorder creates a file format called work that John explained, and so to view these work files, you can use this player, which is an offline browser essentially. And then you could also upload them back into Webrecorder.
yes, but this is just for viewing your local copies using the same way that's on the hosted service on webrecorder.io. So just to give a quick one. Oh, that's not downloads. So there's the name of it. So if you have a significantly large work file, it will take a little bit of time to index these files. The speed of it on with Webrecorder.io is because as we're recording, we have already made ourselves aware of the contents and associated so that we could quickly and rapidly give you when you want to view things. However, we have to redo that process locally on your computer when you're using the player, so you just give it a little bit of time if it's significantly large enough. And pretty much you have the same view here. It's a little bit stripped down because you don't record here. If you added any metadata or your lists here, they're still there and you can view them. And then, did I download a bum copy?
I'm just trying to
Oh well. Sorry about that. A lot of demos, right? So this is the same collection I showed you previously when starting out the ones. I had an additional one, stuff that was pretty cool. You could go through it here. You can view it the same way.
Do you want to disconnect from the Wi-Fi to show the? So John's now disconnecting from the Wi-Fi to show that this is actually all of this is running offline.
Here, and if we had
What was that other one with the planets?
this one is really cool. It has the little visualizations along with the files and the background changes. Super cool stuff. There's one sites like this. Those are the things that really got me very excited and interested with archiving because it's using the traditional means, pages like this, dynamic content, especially if someone's writing stories, live tweeting, live blogging, anything that is documenting stuff in real time, it's not going to be preserved using traditional web archiving, which is a shame. And then, oh, here's the, as well as they do well with educational games. So this is a sort of like there's coding blocks or anything. How can we code or how can you think of it? It gives you a little instruction, and it's like you gotta close that, and we gotta just drag and drop so we can get our robot friend over to the endpoint. Yay! We did it. Coding is fun. Yes, and it's these dynamic and interactive experiences as well as the easy stuff that we attempt to be able to preserve and replay and give you as well the ability to do so. Alrighty.
So, this feels like a sort of simple question, but I'll ask it productively. So if you want to get a site that's got a lot of stuff in it, an Omeka site that's got a ton of items in it, you've got that capability built in now to just say go and, act like a crawler, but record like Webrecorder?
That's one of the things we're currently, and I guess if you wanted to, we can do a quick hot swap to show you off to answer that question if you wanna.
Oh, I don't know how much time. So yeah, to answer that, we are in the process of building that capability.
Okay.
So we have a new crawling-based system that uses the same technology as Webrecorder, but can actually do crawls and automatically visit sites. At some point that will be integrated into Webrecorder.io, where essentially, yeah, you could start a kind of a crawl using browsers,
And then you mentioned that it
Capture
can
the
integrate or import crawler stuff. So if I've already got a wget, but it's got gaps because the crawler can't get the dynamic content.
Right. So if you have a work file created through wget, you can actually upload it into Webrecorder, and then there's a patch mode. So actually, maybe do you want to show patch mode real quick? If you have a sorry, it's just disconnect from the Wi-Fi. Yeah. So there's a patch mode which will take an existing collection, and then patch in anything that's missing. And so you could use that with,
Okay.
yeah, so let's see. Maybe you start, maybe just find something like, yeah, maybe that's good.
This is a very interesting talk that was given yesterday, whereas you have a blogging platform, if you will, students can do assignments and then they have responses for it, and it only uses Google Sheets as the back end. It's all generated and you can wipe the sheet, and it was a very unique approach that I'd never come across before, which was quite, in my opinion, novel. And I have to give you the name, but the stuff that they were doing was quite interesting for it. So I did just that one and we looked at it. We're replaying, so if we do more, what went wrong? Well, we can fix that.
Yeah, so if you're browsing and in the drop down in the top left, you can switch to patch mode, and then it will patch in things that are missing in that mode.
All right. Now let's see if we fixed our problem. And we did. What was previously was not there, we just fixed it again by patching, and if we go back, we have the content now. Anyone else have any more additional questions or something that you want me to show off?
So, if you're to use this and go to something like Netflix and start watching a movie, would it
Hypothetically speaking.
That's a good question. I don't.
Recorder done.
Well, I don't personally know.
Yeah.
For that.
YouTube, on the other hand, definitely tested it with YouTube. Wait, is this being recorded? So it works.
Well, for your own personal.
I mean, but in all, yes, in all.
If you have a video, especially if you have, for example, a blog that embeds a YouTube video in it, and you want to capture that embedded YouTube video, Webrecorder can help you do that, or also Vimeo or SoundCloud or any of these other platforms that provide embeds that you might want to use in another site, especially a blogging site. So I think that's we've tested those use cases.
As a use case that came to mind before you even showed any of this was we've got language teachers, right? So we have I'm in a graduate school and we teach language at kind of a higher level, so they're using authentic materials. And one pain point over the years has been news sites. So I was looking at a Japanese news site, and they're looking for news that's of the day that often will go away because there's like a paywall or something like that. And so we've been doing screen capture, all the workarounds and all that. And this just kind of blew my mind because it's like, oh, we can create an archive collection of news stories over time that they could come back to, that she could link out to, and students get access to it.
Yes.
It's like, okay, it's brilliant.
Or you could you could take very small work files and attach them to like the closed quizzes and the kind of materials that would actually make use of that video in a empirical context, where you can package it together.
Yep.
With hacks, students.
With hacks. Put it all together, yeah. No, it's really interesting.
Yes, and it's especially good if a student or any person that you lose your credentials and you can't log in, but you want to be able to get the original content. All of it, especially if you do have video or any dynamic media, or as your presentation was that you had the random cats coming along. If you wanted to just go through and do, hey, I don't know where all my login stuff, I can't change this, but I want to save this because they're going to close this down. I don't have access. Somebody like if Google does something, I'm just using them as the scapegoat for this example. They're to say, nope, we're done. We're not supporting it. It's dead, like they did with Google Plus recently. Then you could use Webrecorder, go get that content, all the original ultimate representations, i.e. you said you did you randomly spin the wheel, choose a URL from your array, that the URL and that leads to the image that would be associated, and you have all that content back as well.
Just on the subject of Google, they're deprecating the classic Google sites in 2021, and so you guys are going to save our butts. I mean, this is, I've got literally hundreds of student projects done over the years in classic Google sites, and they keep extending the deprecation date, but you know it's coming.
Oh yes.
The donation form is right at the top of the.
Yes, we are a startup, currently grant funded.
Well, we're a nonprofit that,
Yeah.
not really, not a startup, but yeah, or
If you-
part of a nonprofit that, yeah, we're entirely funded by grants at this point. We've recently launched a supporter program, so yeah, if you do want to support Webrecorder, there is a way that you can donate, or you can sign up for a monthly or yearly subscription plan as well, or supporter plan. Yeah.
And the free option will always be made available because that's the goal. One of the core goals of Webrecorder is to give you the ability and the agency to preserve the content that is important to you. We have no idea. We don't want to make those decisions. It's on you to use our tools because we have the technical ability, and we want to see that people can preserve what is important to them, most importantly, versus saying, hey, this us saying we're going to be crawling this domain at this time because we see some significance, and we're not going to do this one. So it's on. We want to give the power to y'all.
And additionally, all the tools here are open source, so if you want to run it on your own rather than using our hosted version, you can do that as well. And I think we can talk about it afterwards. Come talk to us about how to do that. But we are working on improved documentation for running Webrecorder on your own.
Anybody else have any more questions or something you want me to try out and to see if we can preserve?
So, I'm sorry, you may have already said this, but I spaced it, I think. So if there's something that is random on a page, will that ability to have a random generator be in the recording as well?
The results of the random, if the randomness is from an external service or API point, we are not have like the generator. But if it's a local random, i.e., you spin the wheel in the something that's embedded in the page, that will be persisted. But if it's something, if you're like the randomnumbergenerator.com, what the number that they spit out for you in the HTML page that they're serving you will have that content, but we will not be able to unless we preserve the server. And we're working on that slowly but surely. We're not quite there yet.
And just to reinforce it, so it's a spin the wheel thing. There are 10 options in your recording. You spin it 3 times. You could spin it 6 times in the recording and not only get 6 authentically different responses, but not even in the same order that they were recorded in when you spun it in the recording.
Yes, if
Okay.
it's reproducible, but if you have to go ask
Sure,
somewhere
sure.
else, but yes, if it's
Okay.
locally, that is persistent
Okay.
because it was exactly what was sent over to you, and that's exactly what we save and make available via the WAR file. Anybody else have any more questions? Or you just want to be done? It's up to y'all.
Do you want to show the final slide of the supporting
Oh, yes. Yep, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you need, you can email us at support@webrecorder.io. That'll reach everyone. Or my email is on the front as well, so you can view Ilya's slides. You can contact us both directly via those emails or on Twitter at John Aberlin on Twitter.
And this will go to the whole team, so we'll be able to respond.